I was staying at my friend's place for the weekend. She was away on a trip with her family. But she had a small cat that was afraid of thunderstorms. And this weekend, we were supposed to get a really bad storm. Her cat was very independent though, usually just sitting alone in whichever room. She felt like it started storming the day before my friend left, and it continued throughout the whole weekend. This was on Saturday. I had spent the night there with no issues at all. Her cat Molly did fine with the storm that morning. I enjoyed relaxing on her comfy couch and reading. I always loved staying at my friend's place because it was out in the woods. It felt so isolated and peaceful. Midway through the day though, a call came in on the home phone. This was back when those were a common thing. I checked in case it was her trying to reach me, but it said unknown number. So I didn't answer, but a few minutes later, a call came through again. It said the same thing, unknown number. It rang out, but this time a voice came through on the answering machine. It was a quiet male voice. They just said one word, my friend's name, as if asking if she could hear him. He then hung up after a couple seconds of silence. I didn't know if this was someone she was talking to, or like a family member or something. So I just texted her to let her know that someone called the home phone. I did find it strange that it came up as an unknown caller though. Over the next 3 hours, 2 more calls came in from that same number, but no more voice messages. My friend never responded either. I guess they were pretty busy. I didn't worry myself about it though. I figured it was nothing. I made food and really spent the rest of the day not doing much of anything. Later, say around 8 or 9, I found a movie to watch upstairs in the bedroom. I got about halfway through it before remembering to check on Molly and make sure she had food and water. I went downstairs, but was confused to see her standing right at the front door, staring at the crack in the doorway, like she was waiting for it to open. I called her name, and she looked at me, but only for a moment, before looking back at the door. It kind of creeped me out, if I'm being honest. I walked up to the door, and hesitantly looked out the peephole at the porch. The glass had fogged up from all the rain, so everything was blurry, and I couldn't really make out anything. But then something moved enough for me to tell there was something, or someone standing on the other side of the porch. I felt a little unsettled, but I continued to watch, trying to get a clearer view of what I was seeing. I really wanted to know for sure if there was someone out there, but I also didn't want to open the door if there was someone there. 2 to 3 minutes went by without any changes in what I could see. I thought I was just scaring myself for no reason after all. If someone was out there, they would have knocked on the door by now. I left the door to go check on Molly's food and water, and grab myself some snacks for the movie. When I passed by the door again, Molly wasn't there anymore. I looked out just to double check, and something looked different. It was still fogged up and blurry, but one of the shapes I saw wasn't there anymore, like it just disappeared. Was there really someone standing there the whole time? Feeling off about everything, I picked Molly up and brought her to the bedroom with me. I turned the movie back on and sat on the bed. The whole time the movie was playing, I couldn't shake a really unsettling feeling. I had 30 minutes went by when suddenly Molly jumped off the bed and walked up to the bedroom door. She didn't scratch at it or look back at me like she wanted to go out. She just stared at the crack in the doorway exactly the same as she did at the front door, like someone was out there. My heart immediately started racing. I called her name in a shaky voice, but her focus was locked on the door. I got up from the bed and quietly walked over, then leaned my ear against the door. I couldn't hear anything, I then crouched down and peered under the crack between the floor. My whole body aggressively shot back. There was someone standing right outside the door just a couple inches away. My eyes immediately looked at the doorknob. I had never even locked it. I snapped the lock down. And almost right away, the person on the other side ran away from the door. They went downstairs, where I could no longer hear anything. I called 911, then called my friend. By the time cops got there, the house was empty, and nobody was around with all the information. It seemed that the intruder was likely a stalker, probably the same one who kept calling. So they tried to trace the phone number, but had no luck. It was pretty much left at that. I feel bad for my friend, because whoever that man was, he was definitely stalking her and not me. I don't know if it was just a coincidence that they showed up during the weekend, she was gone, or if they were trying to break into what they thought would be an empty home. After all, I never answered the phone, so they probably were confident the house was empty. Maybe they were planning to wait and catch her off guard when she eventually got back from vacation. We never found out who they were or what they were doing. This was in mid-November of last year. I had just gotten laid off due to budget cutting at the office. Luckily, I had some money saved up to cover for me while I searched for a new job for several weeks. I was stuck at home, just looking through lists of job openings on my laptop. After the first 2 weeks though, I started to get a bit impatient. I applied to pretty much every position I was interested in, and I hadn't gotten a single response. I ended up trying to look on different websites. From the usual ones, one of them, I had a bit more luck on finding a few new ones to apply to. And later in the day, I finally got an email from one of them. The manager introduced himself as Zach, and in the email, he said his schedule was pretty packed, but he wanted to get an interview with me that night, if possible. I wasn't fully prepared, nor did I feel comfortable enough to ask why it had to be tonight, but I definitely didn't want to let this slip by without trying. I thought showing up on short notice would be a good way to show my commitment. The job was just some regular sales job, from the looks of it, but the pay was worth it. I agreed to the interview, and Zach sent me the address and said to be there at 7:30. I got ready and headed over, arriving 15 minutes early. I didn't have any time to research the place or anything, so I wasn't all too sure what to expect. The place it had me pull into was the parking lot of a small building. It wasn't obvious from the outside what the building was for. It only had an address number on it. I mean, I assumed it was just an office, because it was a sales job. But it was hard to say, because all the lights were off. The parking lot was also empty. Something felt wrong. I checked the address again and looked it up, and it came back to the same spot. The building had no name on Google either. I called the phone number attached to the email that Zach sent me. He didn't pick up. I called a couple more times and still got no answer. I waited until 15 minutes past the scheduled time, then decided to leave dark, empty building with nobody in the parking lot and getting no reply from the interviewer. The whole thing felt sketchy, and in hindsight I should have been more aware to the possibility. I drove home. I was upset about the waste of time, but overall I just wanted to move past it. I told myself I'd stick with the regular job search websites and would continue the search in the morning. I wasn't sure if Zach gave me the wrong address on accident or what really happened, but I didn't waste more of my time thinking about it. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat on the couch, cracking it open and turning on the TV with no job. I had no bedtime. So I pretty much just chilled on the couch until I felt sleepy throughout the hours though. I kept hearing something upstairs. Just like a creak in the ceiling. I checked out the window a couple of times to see if it was windy outside. But it wasn't at all. The creaking didn't concern me really. It didn't sound abnormal by any means. I think I got tired around 10 p.m. I shut off the TV and the downstairs lights. Then walked upstairs to the bedroom room. The last thing I remember was getting in bed and laying down, falling asleep really quickly. Before suddenly I was awake again. My eyes were opened to the pitch black room. As I laid there, I heard that same creak sound that I'd been hearing. It was close to me, like somewhere on the other side of the room. I looked over with my tired eyes, barely seeing anything in the dark. But then there was a slow and quiet sound that I recognized. As the closet sliding open, my eyes opened a little more, seeing just the outline of the closet door slowly opening. I felt almost like I was frozen, just stuck in place, unable to move. As I watched this happen, my mind wasn't fully convinced this was even real. It wasn't until the closet stopped moving and a figure leaned out from behind it that my body jerked out of the frozen state I was in. I grabbed my phone and jumped out of bed opposite to the side. The closet was on. The figure didn't move, though. They just stood still and stared at me, almost like they were hoping I somehow didn't see them standing up though. And with my eyes adjusted, I was 100% sure what I was seeing was real. I ran out of the room and left my house. As I spoke to a 911 operator, it was probably dumb of me, but I stood in my front yard and watched through my front door at the staircase. I didn't want whoever was in there to leave without getting caught. Obviously, they could have been dangerous and armed, so it wasn't the smartest decision. A few minutes later, 2 cops showed up. I never saw anyone come down the stairs, so I told them where I last saw the guy. They went in and found him still hiding in the closet. When they pulled him out and dragged him into the car, I couldn't believe how disturbing this guy looked. Oily, long and messy hair, disgusting clothes, and these wide, unfriendly eyes. He didn't say a single word as to what he was doing, but it only took a couple days to get the whole story. He had made these fake job listings on multiple sites. There were actually hundreds of fake listings. He made all for different types of jobs. Disturbingly, he had all my info from the resume I sent in, and he knew exactly when I'd leave my house for the interview. So he broke in while I was gone that whole night. He was in my home with me, and just a couple feet away, while I was sleeping. However, we still never got an answer as to what he was planning to do without him outright saying it. There's no way for me to ever know what was going to happen that night. I live in the middle of nowhere. It's flat, barren farmland for miles in all directions. There's a main highway that's not too far from me, but that's about the only paved road. Around here everything else is dirt, or if you're lucky, gravel. Nearest town is 20 minutes away, and it isn't really much of a town anyway. I'm 44 and retired, so I spend most of my days at home. This was a regular, ordinary day for me. It was raining, which it had been for the last week, and I was inside going about my routine. Around noon, I decided to head out to my front porch to have a smoke and enjoy the falling rain. I don't know how long. I sat out there for probably an hour, when I noticed someone coming down the far dirt road that led up to my house again. It was flat land, so I could see pretty far, although the rain made it a bit more difficult. This person was on a bike though, like an ATV motorcycle. or dirt bike riding through the rain. I thought it was odd, but assumed they just mistook my driveway for being a dirt path. They kept coming down it though until they were getting really close to my house. They basically got right up to where my garage was before stopping. The man looked older, but was wearing a full F-face helmet, and he was sitting on the driveway looking at my house. Until he noticed me. He watched me for a moment, then turned around and rode back the way he came. That was probably one of the strangest encounters I had ever had on my property. Nobody ever comes down here, because they shouldn't. I had to assume it was just a mistake. I stayed out for a while longer. Then the rain and wind started picking up, so I went back inside. I had almost entirely forgotten about the unforeseen visit earlier. I made another cup of coffee, and relaxed inside. I was on a call with my brother for a while, and took a nap as well. The day was chill, no errands to run, or things to do around the house. The rain made a pretty sudden change around 8 p.m. though there was thunder and lightning, and heavy downpour that thumped relentlessly against the old roof. But somehow through it, I heard the slightest sound of a heavy engine outside. It had that same dirt bike sound that was identical to the one that came by earlier in the day. I went up to my front window, seeing a headlight carving its way through the fog and rain in the moment. I didn't even think about how crazy it was to be out riding at night in this awful weather, because all I could think about was why had they come back. As they got closer, they shut off their headlight, and instantly they disappeared. I couldn't see them at all. I waited, but they never came up to the garage, like they did last time. Minutes went by without me seeing or hearing anything. Where could they have gone? Unfortunately, situations like these can't easily be called into the police station, so I was on my own. I grabbed my shotgun from the bedroom, which I only kept for self-defense. I had no idea what was going on, if they were lost, or needed help, or if they were dangerous. All I knew was that I was alone in the middle of nowhere, and needed to be extra cautious. I spent the next 20 minutes routinely checking out the windows on all sides of my property. I saw nothing more until I made another rounds, and when I looked out the back window, I just made out something in the fog. It quickly moved away. The eerie nature of it sent chills through me. Being unable to see anything, and having no real way to know what was going on, made it as unnerving as it could possibly be. Then I started hearing muddy footsteps outside my house, like right up against the house, splashing in the mud and water every time I tried to get a look out the window. They'd move.
Have spent years wondering if it had been burglars, a ghost, or something else. I'm thankful Abby was there to protect me. She most certainly scared him off when he was trying to get in through the basement. But even so, I'm still left with so many questions. What the hell was he thinking? Why did he need to drop that card off so late at night? Why didn't he get the hint that we weren't home? When no one answered the front door, why wouldn't he try calling the house to see if we were home? And worst of all, what would have happened had he gotten inside?